A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another RPG review today, so cheers. That's some good stuff. Now, I've been going on a bit of a nostalgia kick lately. My friends from Plaguelands Media know all about the reasons why. I'm not going to go into details with you here, but when I was growing up, and I've told this story before on other videos, but this might be the first one that you are seeing where I tell this story, so here it comes. When I was growing up, I was 10 years old. My mother got me for my birthday a game book, a fighting fantasy game book, specifically Phantoms of Fear. I believe this was in the 30s. There were like 31s previously. Now, these game books are very simply a fantasy role-playing game that you basically play solo. You roll up your character with 3 statistics: skill, stamina, and luck. You use 2 6-sided dice, and you go through these and make choices, and depending on what choice you make, you turn to that chapter, and the story kind of progresses. This was the first one I ever got. To this day, I have never actually beaten it, but I still love it. It's absolutely phenomenal. I also have Trail of Champions and Legend of the Shadow Warriors, just because they were all together in a bookstore, and it was the day of my mother's funeral, and a friend and I were walking around Katoomba, and I saw them in the window, saw Phantoms of Fear, got nostalgic, picked it up, and have just kept them. Now, I have read and played some fighting fantasy books on the channel. You can go and find those if you go and scour through Plaguelands Media's video set. But that is not what I am reviewing today. What I'm reviewing is the role-playing game Advanced Fighting Fantasy. Now, I had this back in the day when it was almost like a novel size, and I apologize for the noise outside. There is a soccer match going on. I have the windows open because it's a beautiful day. Seems like one team is doing pretty well. I had this as like when it first came out as a book form, and then there was another kind of book that went along with it. I believe it was called Black Sand, but I can't really remember. Never got a chance to play it, but always loved the system just because it's fighting fantasy. And this is a world that growing up as a kid, I was so passionate about. I would read the books constantly. I would just sit in my room on a weekend and just roll these dice and read and play these games. So I'm going to review this today because it's a really cool system. It's a surprisingly deep system for a surprisingly simplistic game, which might be a contradiction, but you'll see what I mean. However, I am not just reviewing Advanced Fighting Fantasy. Oh, no. I'm going to review a couple of supplement books. These are books that I had as a kid. I had the original versions of them. I picked them up from Wiseman's Books in Windsor. I bought them with book vouchers that I would win from school for merit certificates and things like that. The first of which is Out of the Pit, Monsters of the Fighting Fantasy world. It says Monsters of Advanced Fighting Fantasy, but Advanced Fighting Fantasy hadn't come out when this had been published originally. And the second one is Titan, the Fighting Fantasy World. Now, I actually have this on audiobook. You can actually get this on Audible. And I absolutely love listening to it. It's one of the things that I probably listen to the most when I'm going to bed or when I'm doing the dishes or something, because it's just such a fantastic read. So there are the 3 books that I will be kind of showing you today. I won't be going into a lot of detail, but I will be showing you what they entail so you can make up your mind if it's a fantasy game or fantasy role-playing game that you want. I will tell you, it is a fantastic gateway role-playing game for younger children, because really everything is basically simplistic math and 2d6. That's all you need. And the book comes with a lot of pre-generated characters. So we're just going to get right into this because I just can't wait to get these down on the table to show you what it all entails. So here we go. Let's go and have a look at the world of Advanced Fighting Fantasy. So here we have Advanced Fighting Fantasy, the role-playing game. You can see this fantastic cover art by John Civic, who actually does some of the art in the book itself, along with a few other artists. Orion Games. Then we have our table of contents. Our forward, acknowledgements, of course. Fighting Fantasy, created by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingston. I apologize. Steve Jackson, of course, used to work for Games Workshop back in the day. So then we have the introductory role-playing game, like the rules of the game, things like that. And we have an adventure. This is so that whoever is running the game can understand the rules and the mechanics. The adventure is called The Well. We have our map and statistics and all things like that. So this was kind of cool. I like it when books do this. They give you a introductory adventure to kind of play by yourself, so you get a feel for the rules. And we have our pre-generated characters here. Quite a lot of them, actually. And then, how do we create heroes? The three main stats in this game are skill, stamina, and luck. When you are rolling up your character in the game book, skill is a d6 plus 6, stamina is 2d6 plus 12, and luck is a d6 plus 6. It's different here. Here, everyone starts with skill, stamina, luck at 8 and magic at 0, and then you assign points, and certain points can go to certain things. There are 3 races in the game: humans, elves, and dwarves. Then we have our list of special skills that you can pick from, and there's a description of what each skill does. Just your typical stuff. The thing that got me about this is there isn't a specific character class. You can make your characters as versatile as you want. You can have a fighter that also has a little bit of magic and things like that. It's actually really, it's a really interesting system. We have some talents here. And then how to finish off creating your character. And then we have some example archetypes. So these are characters that you can actually use. This one is just an adventurer. We have a warrior, an archer, rogue, barbarian. So if you don't want to build your characters, you just want a pre-built one, you can use these. This is a warrior wizard, a regular wizard, sorcerer, a priest of Talak. What's that one? Conjurer, knight. So they're all just archetypes. If you don't really want to put points in and build your character specifically, you say, I just want to be a rogue, then just take the rogue archetype and use that. They're actually pretty well-rounded and pretty good for new characters, new players. Kind of appreciate that. So the core mechanics are basically skill tests. You're testing your skill. You roll a d6, you add your skill, and then any modifiers you might have. So let's say you're trying to swim and you've got 2 in swimming. Then you would roll a d6, add your skill, +2. There you go. That's your score. It's that freaking simple. I absolutely love it. Opposed checks. You roll your dice, and then the Dungeon Master rolls their dice, and whoever gets the highest is the winner. Simply. No, whoever gets the highest after everything has been added. So if it's an opposed skill test, you roll your dice, add your skill, add any modifiers, and then the Dungeon Master rolls their dice, adds that skill of the whatever, and then any modifiers, and whoever gets the highest, they win. Simple. Testing luck, same thing, but every time you test your luck, you have to -1 point from your luck. You can't be lucky all the time. Movement actions, riding, climbing, all of the typical stuff is here. Is this going to make a difference? No, that's actually going to make it better for me. Okay. Dodging, social actions, disguise, bribery, hazards, hindrances, all the typical stuff is here from our RPG. Knowledge, skills, things like that. Combat. Combat is really cool. So we have the warrior, skill 7, with a sword, special skill of 2, and an orc with a skill of 6. So roll your dice, add them up. Whoever gets higher then rolls on the weapons table for whatever weapon. So let's say he's using a sword, then he rolls a die, and he gets a 5. He's going to do 3 points of damage. The orc is wearing armor. He rolls a dice, he rolls a 4, he mitigates 1 point of that, he takes 2 points of damage. Simple. And then you just keep going. That's how easy this system is. But the complexity comes in choosing your skills, when to use your skills, when to use your spells, when to use your prayers, if you're a cleric or a priest. And there's fumbles. So if you roll double 1s, you will fumble and you have to roll on this. There's criticals. If you roll double 6s, you critical. If both you and your opponent roll double 1s, you both roll on this table, but both of your weapons also break, which I thought is kind of cool. Different modifiers for environments, all of the different weapons with their lists of what damage you can do when you roll. Armor, descriptions of the armor. How to heal when you're injured. All the basic stuff is here for a fantastic fantasy campaign. You could probably use this rule system in like the Forgotten Realms and just modify it for Dungeons and Dragons if you want a rules light game to introduce people into the Dungeons and Dragons system. I think this is a really good way to go. But I will tell you now, this world is so rich, you could easily just spend years and years playing in this, and even adapting 5th edition to Alancia and Kakabad. Okay, magic is pretty simple, but pretty good as well. You have your magic characteristics, you get your magic points. If you want to cast a spell, then let's see, you roll 2 6-sided dice, and if it's less than or equal to your magic characteristic, the spell goes off. If it's not, then the spell doesn't go off, and if you roll double 1s, the spell affects you. And then you have to roll on the spell failure table. Now there's minor magic, so this is like cantrips in Dungeons and Dragons. Very basic spells that don't really do a lot, but they're kind of cool if you want your character to know a few of these. Just put a few points in magic and see what happens. Then you've got wizardry that uses magic points. And you've got your wizard spells with the cost here. So Befuddle would cost you 1 magic point, whereas Animate would cost you 2 magic points. And there's a lot of spells Fly would cost you 4 magic points, and so on and so forth. And you can kind of see where all of this is going. They basically go up to Death, which costs 8 magic points to cast. Sorcery is based on your stamina. So instead of using magic points, you're actually using stamina points. You don't lose health when you cast sorcery spells. You actually use, you mark off how much stamina each spell costs, and when you get to, and it's like almost like you're being weakened. Sorcery spells, however, have spell components. So you need to have your spell components in order to cast that spell, which is really cool. And then you've got your priests and religions. Now, when you take points in holy magic, you can heal, protection, all of these kind of things. But what you can do as a priest depends on what god you have chosen to worship. So each god, for example, Sindla, the goddess of luck and fate, gives her priest a special power. Once per day, the priest may ask for any die roll either by the director, who's the dungeon master, or player to be re-rolled, and the second roll must be kept. So that's a special power that she grants. But the priest also has bless, ill luck, and heal. So these are the things that the priest can cast. So each god is different. They have a different combination. And then there's a description of what the god or goddess entails or worships, so to speak. And these are all the gods of good. And then we have the neutral gods here. And we have the gods of evil, the chaos gods. Slaying, death, disease, decay. Just amazing. So that's the basic rules of the game. Okay, it's fairly simple. It's not too in-depth. Then we move into the World of Titan. So this is basically a history of the world. We have the map of the world here and the different continents. Now, if you're familiar with fighting fantasy, most of the books are in Alancia, but there is also these other ones and certain islands and stuff that kind of come into play. And we have the continents, Alancia, land of adventure. And here we have the map of Alancia, the islands and oceans. Then we have a price list for all your equipment, how to craft, how to trade. And then we have the director's guidelines. So this is basically the Dungeon Master's Guide, how you run things, how you come up with ideas, what happens if a hero dies, how do you allocate magic items, all of that kind of stuff. Now we have the monsters and enemies, the monster descriptions, and here are the statistics here. So you can see, if I bring this up, they have skills, stamina, number of attacks, weapon, armor, special, habitat, number, type, reaction, intelligence. I will go into that more when I look at Out of the Pit. And then we have the descriptions of our monsters, how to play monsters, how to design missions, non-monster enemies, give them a little character sheet, weapons and armor used by the creatures from Out of the Pit. So that's all of the monsters in Out of the Pit. Adventure ideas, adventure locations, subplans, dungeon generator, which is really cool. And then we have like a mini dungeon here. Then we have our treasure, random treasure generators, magic items, potions, enchanted items, what they do, all that kind of really cool stuff. And then we have optional rules, random hero creation, extra talents, new races, how to kind of create all this, which is really awesome. Alternative unopposed test, multiple special skills, archmages, new magic spells, fallen priests, new weapons and armor. And the appendices just has like the character sheets and all your reference tables and things like that. So that's Advanced Fighting Fantasy, the role-playing game. Now, let's have a look at the other two books that I mentioned in the introduction. Let's check out of the Pit. Now, my original version of this book, this picture was the whole cover. It looked phenomenal. There was no way I could walk past that in a bookstore and go, I need that. I don't need that book. Outstanding. Now, all of the monsters in here come from Fighting Fantasy game books. So if you've read all the Fighting Fantasy game books, you will be familiar. First of all, we have this gorgeous map of Alancia, where you have all of these beautiful, like Fire Island from Island of the Lizard King, Port Blacksand from City of Thieves, Firetop Mountain from the original, very first Fighting Fantasy game book, Warlock of Firetop Mountain, Anvil from the Caverns of the Snow Witch, Zangief, just a Trolltooth Pass. I mean, Salamonis, just beautiful. Then we have Kakabad. Now this is the area that the Sorcery 4-book series was set in. You started in the Shumatanti Hills for book 1, then you went to Ka City Port of Traps, and then you went through here for the Seven Serpents, and then you finally ended up in Mantang Fortress for Crown of Sorcery. And that was and your character kind of, if you beat the first book, you took that same character to the second book, to the third book, to the fourth book. Absolutely amazing little mini campaign. So let's have a look at this for a moment. Let's have a look at the Arcor. The Arcor is like a winged wolf. We have a skill of 7, stamina of 8, habitat, wilderness and hills. Number encountered, 2 to 7, sorry. So they hunt in packs. So when you are creating an adventure, how many of these should the players fight? You roll 1d6 and add 1, and that is the amount in the pack. Type, animal. Reaction, hostile. So it's always going to attack. There are different reactions these creatures can have. They can be friendly, neutral, unfriendly, or hostile. Reaction, hostile. And intelligence, average intelligence. We get a picture and a description. And we get that for every single monster in this book. I would sit and read this book for ages, just reveling in it. Grade 8, 8-man. The art as well, you can see the art for a lot of these is different. That's because different artists did the art for different Fighting Fantasy books. Banshee, Basilisk, Bat, Bear. The Borket always made me laugh. The bear art is phenomenal. Birdman, Black Lion. The Blood Beast from, what is it? Was it Death Trap Dungeon? That's the one, Death Trap Dungeon. Brain Slayer, I believe this was Caverns of the Snow Witch as well. Karth, I think, was from Citadel of Chaos. I know the Calicorn was Citadel of Chaos. Cat People. I mean, you can just sit here. The Claw Beast just looks awesome. There was one book where you actually woke up. You didn't even have any stats and you started as a Claw Beast, if I remember rightly. Giant Crab from Island of the Lizard King. And these just bring back so many fond memories. I'm just going to quick Demon Spawn. Oh, wow. Drakon. Then we have our dragons. Black, gold, green, red, silver, and white. Dwarves, elementals. Elves, Elven, Ice Stinger. Just looking at this reminds me of sitting in my bedroom and just reading this cover to cover over and over and over again, and then going and playing a fighting fantasy book. It was just awesome. Gonchon was the main bad in Island of the Lizard King, I believe. Hell Demon, Headhunter. Oh my, look at this art. Like, this is old school, awesome fantasy art. Lizard King, Lizard Man, Man Orc. I love the Minotaur art. Messenger of Death always freaked me out as a kid. This one, the Mirror Demon. Look at that. That is absolutely phenomenal. Mungie always reminded me of Gizmo from Gremlins. Night Stalker looked a bit like my grandmother. Orc is amazing. Death Trap Dungeon was probably my favorite fighting fantasy book. And I loved when Trial of Champions came out because that was the direct sequel to Death Trap Dungeon. Baron Sukhumvit created Death Trap Dungeon, and then his brother was on this island and was training these slaves, and one of them was going to become his champion to defeat his brother in Death Trap Dungeon. So Trial of Champions, you start on the island trying to survive, and then you become the Baron's kind of person who goes to the Death Trap Dungeon. And then, if you win the Death Trap Dungeon, there was another book called Armies of Death, where you use that money that you won in Death Trap Dungeon to buy an army, and it was just amazing to me. It blew my fragile little mind. Rhino Man, cool. Giant Scorpion, Serpent Guard, Serpent Queen is also awesome. Serpent Queen, I believe, is in City of Thieves. Sharks, Scorns, Slime Sucker, Skunk Bear, Snake Demon. So you can see how many different monsters you kind of come up against. Vampire, that's cool. Were creatures. The wheelies reminded me of those creepy bastards at the beginning of Return to Oz that were chasing Dorothy. I mean, they don't look the same, but just the same feeling. Wyvern, Worm. End up with Zombie. Then we have treasures and encounter tables. Out of the Pit, seminal part of my childhood. Growing up, one of my favorite books. I wish I still had the original, but it fell apart because I was reading it so much. I'm just glad they reprinted it in its original form. Now we come to this one. Titan, the Fighting Fantasy World. Once again, this was the entire cover of the book. The book was this size, but this picture just filled the entire cover. And holy crap, as a kid, did I not love this picture. It was amazing. I just can't get over how much this is bringing me back. So, Titan is actually just about the fighting fantasy world. We get a map of all of the continents. Old World, I believe, was where all of the kind of gothic horror fighting fantasy books were set. Books like The Legend of the Shadow Warriors and that really awesome one with the vampire castle. We have our map of Alancia again. And we get a history of the world itself. The Old World and a history of the Old World. And cool, and a history of the Dark Continent. So this is basically a reference book. And then we get the history and legends. the origins of the gods, everything you wanted to know about the history of the fighting fantasy world is in this book. It is just phenomenal. The War of the Wizards, the New Age, some of these diagrams are just great. The Forces of Good, so we have the Gods of Good, the Dwarves, we have the City of Fangthane, all kind of laid out here. We have the Elves, Stittle the Elven Tree Village, lesser races of good, the gnomes, the pixies, the sprites. Then we have the allies. Now, this is probably one of my favorite parts of the book because these allies are characters that you can actually encounter if you play the fighting fantasy game books. And so if you've played them, you will recognize the names, but here you get their backstories because you don't really get that in those books. It's just like Kalidas the Holy Man is the guy that you need to find to get rid of a curse that was put on you by the Snow Witch in Caverns of the Snow Witch, and you have to kind of find him and get the curse removed. The Star Pupils, Nicodemus and the Death Spell. Nicodemus is in, I believe, City of Thieves. Then we have Yaz-Tromo, Darkwood's Keeper, and there's his tower there. Then we have the neutral forces, Logan the Trickster. There was actually a book that was released for Advanced Fighting Fantasy. It was almost a campaign that dealt with Logan the Trickster. I did have it back in the day. I tried to run it a couple of times, but my friends at the time weren't really interested in it. Then we have the Animal Courts. And now we have the Forces of Evil and Chaos, the Dark Lords, the Demon Princes, the Priests of Slang and Tanit. We have the Demonic Planes here. And we have like the hierarchy of the Demon Pits, Legions of the Damned, Orcs, the different Orc clans here with their kind of imagery. Now, when I was a kid, didn't really read this correctly. The Bone Rat Caves. Really simple to read. As a kid, I honestly thought it was called the Bonarat Caves, and that's what I called it for the longest time until about 3 years ago when I looked at it and went, fuck, I'm an idiot. This dungeon design, I actually used as the layout of a dungeon I ran in one of my first ever times running Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition for my friends in high school, and their job was to go into this cave system and retrieve a mushroom for a wizard. And they went in there and they found the mushroom. It was growing in the latrines of the orc caves. And they got it back to him and he paid them with the sack of gold that he owed them, and then he left. They didn't bother to open the sack of gold. That's on them. That's not on me. And a switch just flicked off in my head. And when they opened the sack, it was filled with river stones. And they were so fucking pissed that every time they did something and then got a reward, they made sure the guy was there and they opened it and they had to make sure that that was the reward they got. I thought it was a stroke of genius. They fucking hated it. You guys know who you are if you're watching this. Goblins, trolls and ogres, serpent people, brilliant. Dark elves. Now we have the Faces of Evil. Razak the Undying was from Chasms of Fear, I believe. Malbordis the Stormchild. Sharila the Snow Witch, the Demonic 3. This is really one of my favorite parts of this book. Getting the backstories Succumvit and Karnus. Baron Succumvit made the Death Trap Dungeon, and Lord Karnus is the one that sends you there in Trail of Champions. The Archmage is the villain from the 4-book campaign. The Shimatanti Hills, Car City, Port of Traps, the Seven Serpents, and Crown of Sorcery. Lord Azure, the Tyrant of Black Sand. And then we have a map of Port Black Sand there. And then the Underwater Kingdoms, of course. Atlantis, the Sunken City. Traveling from Alancia to Budabak. Roughing It. Gold prices, money. All of that stuff is in here. Inns and taverns. And then we have the Black Lobster Tavern in Port Black Sand, a map of that. That is Advanced Fighting Fantasy, the role-playing game. It is a fantastic system for new players. It is a fantastic system for people that just want a quick game, a one-off. It's a very rules-light system, but at the same time, the world, as you have seen, is so rich in lore. There are so many monsters that you can use that it just works perfectly. I would highly recommend this. It is one of my favorite role-playing game systems, but again, I'm saying that from a nostalgic point of view. So there you have it. Advanced Fighting Fantasy, the role-playing game, out of the pit, and Titan, the fighting fantasy world. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, leave a comment if you remember Fighting Fantasy, and if you have fond memories of it, or if you never won a game book in the series and just want to rant, please share your memories with me. I would really like it. But most importantly, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and of course, stay safe. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, as always, I'm going to end these videos with a simple message from me to you. Roll some fucking dice, people.